Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Zaria Rubin, a functional medicine doctor, an international speaker, and a burnout badass because I've been there myself. After walking away from my own high-stress medical career, I discovered how to break free from burnout to reclaim my passion, purpose, and joy. And now I'm here to help you do the same. From science-backed tips to time-saving hacks, and hopefully some aha moments that just might change your life. So sit back, relax, and let's do this. Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout podcast, where we share deep conversations with people making a difference in women's lives. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Juhi Raizada, a pediatrician and dedicated parent coach, whose mission is to help moms approach parenting with more calm, confidence, and connection, and to let go of the yelling and the guilt that we all are familiar with. With years of experience in clinical pediatrics, Dr. Juhi founded the Calm Parenting Collective, where she transforms parenting stress into grounded, peaceful communication and stronger bonds. As a parent of a super challenging kiddo myself, I, for one, can't wait to dive into this conversation. So welcome, Dr. Juhi, to the Outsmart Burnout podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zaria, for having me on your podcast. I'm an avid fan and a lifelong learner, and I've learned so much from your podcast.
Thank you. That's so sweet. So, before we dive into all the nitty gritty about parenting, which I know we're deep in the back to school season here, and I think so many moms are ready to hear what you have to share with us today. But let's start off at the beginning. Tell us a little bit more about your journey and what led you to go from, pediatrics, being a pediatrician, to take a little bit of a detour into parenting coaching. Now, I know from medical school and residency and my friends who are pediatricians that they don't actually teach you that much about parenting in pediatrics.
Yes, you got that exactly right. And that's exactly what was kind of weighing on my mind when I kind of redirected myself in this direction. And I love pediatrics. I've been practicing it for about 20 years. I love taking care of kids, the continuity of care, and all of the medical knowledge that I had. But that's what, exactly you got that right. That, when people look at pediatricians, they're just like, oh, you're a pediatrician. You know everything about kids and you can fix it all. And, your kids are probably perfect. And, there's just a lot of like notion of that. Whereas like, I know, whether pediatrician or not, you're a mom, when it comes to your child, like it's a whole different aspect that you're dealing with. And I personally was having difficulty in connecting with, my tween and, my teenager. And so I was in search for a way to do this better. A lot of times we are bringing on the generational patterns with us. And that's how we parent. We are not parenting from a book or a manual. And we can't because every kid is different and every personality is different. So I went ahead and got a certification in parent coaching. Just during the process, I learned so much and I was applying those techniques in my parenting and, in fact, in my clinic, in the patient rooms, because pediatrics is a lot about parent child interaction and supporting the parents through the illness or even the well child checkups. And so I was all across the board able to take these skills and practice them. And I saw huge results and huge transformations, both in my professional and personal life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I as the mom of a tween myself, oh boy, it's a roller coaster. I mean, it's a roller coaster at every age, and we're not necessarily prepared, and there is no manual, and the kids don't read the manual, and your kid might not fit into what the textbook says. So I applaud you for doing that and for filling the gaps in your knowledge because there are huge gaps when it comes to traditional pediatric care or more traditional parenting, and then making that emotional connection. So, what did you notice what was sort of missing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, filling the gaps is so important. And I've always considered myself as a lifelong learner. So I'm always up for, something new, challenging every year, so to speak. And so I was, doing everything right as a mom. I was quote unquote trying to be, the cool mom or trying to understand the text language or the slang and trying.
I'm fluent in Gen Alpha, no cap.
It's just like I'm doing everything I can because I was also seeing the moms around me and they're just like, well, our kid said, we why don't you be like her, like, and but inside, like in my home, I was still struggling in that. I think the biggest thing was the connection piece, and a lot of times, we look at tweens and teens specifically, and we see that they're tall, and we see that they act all mature, and we tend to forget that their brain is still developing, and in fact their brain is continuing to develop till they turn 25. So the prefrontal cortex, where you have like all the empathy and the connection piece, is just maturing throughout childhood and part of adulthood. So just learning a lot of science backed information that was kind of, there was gaps in that, helped me develop more empathy, connection. And it was really about awareness and acknowledgement as the first piece so that I could, come in from a place of, well, yeah, there was a shrug of shoulders or there was an eye roll, but I'm just seeing the tip of the iceberg there. There's something under that gesture that I need to focus on more. And a lot of times as parents, we take that eye roll as a personal attack. And
Mhm.
that's where we kind of have to learn how to disassociate. It's really hard and it takes practice and reps, but it is something that has helped me personally a lot in my parenting journey to establish a close connection with my kids.
I love that. You mentioned something earlier about how we're not necessarily parenting from the science or the knowledge because we don't get that, whether it's, growing up or even in medical school and residency, even in pediatrics. But you mentioned the sort of the intergenerational learning that we take on, or maybe the baggage that we carry with us into our parenting journey. And so, how do you sort of reconcile that? Like your upbringing, your childhood, the way your parents raised you, are you doing it the same? Are you doing it differently? And then, how do you interact with your parents who might say, oh my gosh, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it is, inner work. It takes a lot of inner work because, you know, everyone's raised a certain way in a certain home. And nothing against parents and grandparents, they're doing their best with the knowledge they have. So, first step is to recognize that they have done their best in their capacity. Their love is unconditional, for us as their kids. But we have to now decide what we want to pass through the next generation and what do we want to stop, you know? And a simple exercise that I have my clients do is I have them write a letter to their parents, and they don't have to show it to them, but they have to just write it on paper or type it up. And then I have them.
It's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you'd be surprised. This exercise is so revealing and transformational in and of itself. And it's simple. It's very personal, but most of us don't do it. Most of us don't take the time to get our feelings on paper. And then the second piece of this exercise is to write a letter to your child or children, and then the third piece of this is to write a letter to your future self as you see yourself, like, say, you can just kind of set a timeline, say 20 years from now when your kids are grown up. And what this exercise does is that it kind of walks you through what your childhood has looked like, because essentially you're parenting from that space, whether you know it or you recognize it or not. And then you are writing in the second piece to your child. And so, there's a lot of things that might be similar or different in these two letters that might, outpour. And then the third piece is really kind of visualizing yourself after your kids are grown up and the work you've done through those years, and seeing what would be like the feeling or what would be the thought process that you would want to kind of visualize looking at it from now to then, and then backtracking to see what values and boundaries we want to set with our kids, because this is all kind of coming very intentionally at that point. It's not just kind of a free fall, or you're not kind of just living day to day and, deciding rules today and then changing them tomorrow, because we don't often look at the end game. Like, we don't see our children as grown up and the values that we've, imparted on them through the formative years. But this exercise kind of puts everything into a 360 overview, and it brings everything in perspective.
That's so cool. I love that. So, speaking of parenting, kind of just day to day, flying by the seat of your pants, just sort of getting by and being in survival mode, you really focus on helping moms sort of stop yelling at their kids and start
Exactly.
connecting with their kids. So talk to us a bit more about that, and why is it that, yelling at your kids is such a common response in modern parenting, and what is it a warning sign for when you see it or experience it personally?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's the worst feeling, We yell at our kids and then we feel guilty. And that guilt is real, and it kind of like, it turns into a cycle. The That's it's so important, and a lot of times, the clients, they come to me and they're just like, we're just not confident in our parenting. Like, it's like we're struggling with confidence because they don't want to be the bad guy. So a lot of times parents are just giving in because they don't want to yell, which is also not healthy. And we want our kids to feel blessed, not spoiled. And there's a difference between the two. And it could be a fine line to be, staying firm, saying no and giving in, and then feeling bad for both of them, So what I usually teach, I teach a 4-step framework, which is called the CALM framework, and it stands for connection. So we're building a bridge with guidance, acknowledge. So we're validating the feelings, leading with boundaries, and modeling the behavior that we want to cultivate in a calm, harmonious home. So we want to start with the connection piece. For example, instead of saying, "Oh, you're just get over it, this is not a big deal." Imagine if we said, "I see you're really frustrated right now. I can see that it didn't go as you had planned. Let's take a deep breath together and then we can figure it out."
Hmm.
And that is just going to, even if the child is so upset, is going to at least communicate to them that my parent is here for me, that it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated. In the moments that say, I lost a match, or I didn't get a good grade, or I didn't do so well on a test, we first thing is we have to normalize these feelings. And a lot of times we're not able to normalize these in our homes because we are not able to handle these emotions.
Hmm.
And that's where all the inner work and the coaching comes in, because it's It's a guidance to handling your feelings and regulating your nervous system so that you can help regulate your child's nervous system. It's not their fault if they fell and they cried for a long time, even though it's not a big thing in your eyes. It's not their fault if they are upset at an easy game they lost. And it's not abnormal for them to get upset, is what is so important for them to understand. Because if we keep on suppressing the feelings and the emotions, then it is building up inside.
Mm.
And it is going to come out in another situation as an outburst. And that's what kind of ties into your question, why does yelling happen? Yelling is happening because we are building in, we're trying to stay strong, and we're just like, yeah, we can handle this. Like as moms, we can do, multitask, and we can go to work full time and then be the class mom and then be the team mom and then drive the kids all over town and then some. And we all want to be Pinterest moms, but we're not giving grace to ourselves. And when we don't take care of ourselves, we are going to have outbursts like that. And in that, we are not taking care of our families. So
Mm.
it just spills everywhere.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the critical piece is it's on the airplane, you don't put your kid's oxygen mask on first. You put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can help others and you can help them. But we don't do that as moms. We put ourselves last and then we're shocked when we snap and we're just exhausted and overburdened and overextended and we've got the mental load of everything on top of all of the actual literal things that we're juggling and then we snap and then we feel guilty and we don't realize that that is a warning sign really of burnout essentially.
Absolutely. 1000%. What our kids really need is a pilot who is calm, who knows where they're going, and they've got everything laid out. But we can only be pilots if we are taking the time to stay calm and regulated in moments where, we get triggered. And trigger is another important word because triggers are mirrors, recognition. And that's why I have the A after the connection is the acknowledgement of our feelings and our child's feelings. So the awareness piece of where am I getting triggered? Where am I, getting to a point where I yell? That is literally showing you the way, the opportunity to understand your feelings and your child's feelings. When a child throws a tantrum, it is not that they're trying to give you a hard time. It's literally that they are having a hard time handling their emotions. And if we keep blaming them for having a meltdown in the middle of a Target aisle, then we're not going to be able to come to a point where we actually see them and the struggle that they're having dealing with their emotions. And we don't want to just keep on jumping into lecturing. We have to start listening to our kids
Hmm.
so that we don't react, we actually respond.
Okay, I love that. They're not reacting, but responding. But that definitely requires that you have your own nervous system regulated. And that requires that you're not in burnout mode yourself or you're not in fight or flight mode yourself. And so, what are some of the common manifestations of burnout you see in parents in terms of emotions like guilt or irritability or disconnection? And then, how can we as parents start to reframe all of that with compassion for ourselves and for our kid and maybe get back on track? Because here's the thing, it's like when I coach people and counsel people with burnout, and maybe it has to do with your job or other things. I mean, you can quit your job. It's difficult. You can do it. You cannot quit being a parent.
Absolutely. So, definitely signs of mom burnout would be, getting really snappy and getting triggered, um, really, repeatedly, and looking for, fatigue and being tired as a mom definitely would lead you into a burnout situation as well. The way to kind of what I teach in my coaching program to overcome burnout as a mom would be to build in what I call micro vacations during the day.
Okay, tell us about this micro vacations. I wanna go on a micro vacation. I wanna go on a macro vacation too, but
Yeah, and let's be honest, I mean, we all love vacations and we all look at vacations like, downtime, but sometimes vacations can be more stressful.
I was just gonna say, vacations with kids are not vacations. Let's actually rename them because
Mhm.
let's get real. Any mom knows if you take a vacation with kids, especially if you're alone with the kids, that is not a vacation.
Exactly, exactly. Like, it's more stressful, it's more planning, and we're all kind of going on this vacation thinking, "Oh, it's going to be relaxing." But we all are coming back from a vacation needing another vacation.
Exactly.
And so I thought that if we were to build look at it from a point of view of building micro vacations in our daily ritual, then it's going to elevate, the self care that we talk about all the time. And so that first piece would be to recognizing what would be something that relaxes me, because not every self care ritual out there works for every mom who's busy, who doesn't have time, who's taking care of all the kids and her work. And so, is it like, listening to music that I like? Is it something that I want to get a bath every night or every other night? So, first thing would be to recognizing, is it a certain aroma that relaxes me? Is it truly like meditating that relaxes me? Or is it going to the gym? And this is what I call micro vacation, because that is built into your daily ritual and is going to prevent you from getting to the point of triggering.
Mm.
A lot of times when we spend time for ourselves, we can look back and say, "Yeah, I did do that workout this morning. Yeah, I did take out those 5 minutes for myself." Even if it was just sitting down, sipping my coffee in quiet and maybe journaling. But if we don't have something to look back on, we're running on empty. And if we're running on empty, we can't really pour from an empty cup. So it's really, really important to build in this micro vacation in our daily rituals as moms.
I love that. I love that concept. I think, yeah, it's so important to recognize that, yes, we do need a break. We do need a pause. We deserve this as moms. We cannot be on all the time, every minute of every day, because if we don't acknowledge that, then we do slip into that burnout mode and the yelling or the getting triggered. And once we recognize that, it's really, like you said, it's digging deep and figuring out, well, what is it that does recharge me? Because I think a lot of us don't know, or we do what we think we're supposed to do. Like, I'm supposed to take a bath, but I hate baths, or I'm supposed to go work out, but I don't like, this particular workout. And you have to figure out what works for you. And it might not be the same thing as what works for somebody else. And we all also just tell ourselves often, like, well, I just don't have time. I don't have time. There's no time, but we have to make the time.
Yeah, we have to prioritize it. And it's just, it boils down to the fact whether it's if I want to take care of my family the way I want to, then I do have to take care of myself as well. But I definitely have gone through a stage in my life where I have burnt out and I have, thought that I just want to finish all my housework and then I will sit down. Well, that never happens. And so pausing is really important. Whether it means a 5 a.m. wake up or not, that's up to an individual's, schedule. But
It's
it's
not gonna be mine. I am not a morning person, Dr. Juhi.
yeah. So that's why I don't think we can just kind of put this in stone that, if you're not waking up at 5 a.m., none of this is possible. I don't think that's true. I think it self-care has to be as flexible as possible so that it's actually doable. And, labels like that kind of prevent moms from even trying something out, during their day. And it's just something that builds up that, the burnout, and it comes out as a yell, and then eventually it forms into a guilt, and then there's discord and disconnection in the relationship, which no one wants. We all want a really cordial, positive, close relationship with our kids. But if we build these simple things in our daily routines and we practice them again and again, then they become part of our habit, and we don't think twice about it at that point.
What are some, insights and tips that you could share with our listeners in terms of building that connection with our kids? Like, so that we're not snapping at them or we're not taking the eye roll seriously. Or, like, let's say you have a tween and they just want to be in their room on their iPad. And, like, how do we break through? How do we build on those moments and small moments and maybe rituals and creating things with our kids so that we have that foundation and we have that connection we can go back to, that builds that resilience for the relationship, so we're less likely to snap or yell, and if even if we do, we have that strong bond and connection there to support us.
Yeah, no, that's such a great question, especially with the teenagers, the fact that they want to be left alone in the room. And there's so much talk about that. And there's so many myths around that they're lazy, or they're on their phones, or they just care about their friends and they don't care about parents anymore, and on and on. And I think the first thing we need to do is drop assumptions. We are assuming so much about our kids that we forget to actually look at the real situation and what's underneath that behavior. And it's a known fact that teens do require some alone time to recharge and reset. It again is not personal. It's not nothing to do with being a bad parent or not doing enough or having a lazy teen. But it is important to have an open dialogue with your teen when they do come around for the dinner conversation, or when you're, say, in a car ride with them, to, understand and always lead with empathy so that you are not breaking that connection. As soon as there's a moment where the teen feels like you're not leading with empathy, they are going to get into their isolated mode. Because as it is, teens are struggling with a lot of things: friends, keeping up with peers, and sometimes identity issues. And there might be something that they're dealing with in school that they are hesitating to discuss with you. And if we are able to empathize and just be, I'm here if you want to talk. If they come to you with a problem, make sure that they know that you are all ears, listening with no distractions, and ask them if they want advice or they just want you to listen. I want to make sure that the parents do realize that they're not losing control by practicing parenting with empathy. They can still hold boundaries. They still hold the values. It's not okay to cross the boundary, and a follow through must be exercised. Say, if it's a curfew situation with a teen, or if it's a hitting situation with a toddler, if it's not okay to hit. We do not hit in this family, but there's a certain tone and a certain way to express that. And that's really key, whether it's a toddler or a teenager. And what's even more important beyond that is repair. So yelling is one thing, but to come back to your child and be okay with apologizing with what had happened once you've reflected on the situation and once they have reflected on the situation is going to be the key to the long lasting positive relationship that we are all longing for.
Yeah, I think that piece is really important. And I think, I have to pat myself on the back because I did grow up in a household with a lot of yelling, but there wasn't repair. And if I do occasionally lose it with my kiddo, which does happen, I profusely apologize to her and I explain to her what happened. I say that it's not her fault, that it was my fault, that I let things get out of hand or that I was stressed about XYZ. And I think it's really important for kids to hear that because they internalize blame. And then that can lead to perfectionism and all of the things. Believe me, I know.
Yep.
And thinking that you're responsible for situations and that you need to control situations and you need to make sure that mom is okay, etc. And so I'm really clear with her that that's not her responsibility.
Yeah. No, I applaud you for that. That's amazing. What we model is really important.
It's a journey, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's nobody's perfect. Perfection is a myth. It's a process. We're all trying to just get 1% better than yesterday, you know. And it's definitely a journey, but whatever we model, even when we model saying sorry or when we model holding a boundary when a teen is grounded or when we model, just how we talk to elders, our parents, our friends, we are teaching our kids. I mean, the thing is that all the kids are essentially homeschooled, in my opinion, because even if they go to school for a few hours, they all come back home. And that's where a lot of learning is happening. And so if we kind of pivot a little bit and look at it from a lens of, we're really teaching our kids every interaction that we're having, then I think parenting will become more intentional and empathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. I just have to do a little shout out to my fellow parents of more challenging kids. So the high needs babies and toddlers, the neurodivergent kids, the strong willed kids, the medically challenging kids. So I have like all of the above because I feel like parenting is hard. It's the hardest job there is. It's hard enough at baseline. And then when you add in all of these other layers, the opportunities for burnout, parental burnout, are just so exponentially higher. And so, what do you say to those families and to those kids for whom, like, the textbook methods don't work? Nothing works. They don't follow the rules and the patterns and the norms. And everyone else is like, my kid goes to bed so easily, or my kid goes to summer camp, all the time and sleepovers, no problem. And you're just like, God, like I can't hear it anymore about how like every step of the way is a huge challenge.
Yeah. No, definitely. I've definitely seen it in my practice and I totally understand. And it's not, first thing for these parents is that it's not your fault. I think a lot of times I've seen it time and again that parents are starting right off the bat with guilt. Like, what have I done wrong to have a child who is not sleeping? Or what have I done wrong that my child doesn't do this, that where other kids are? And a lot of times it could
Well,
also be,
that's
you know,
societal. I mean,
yeah.
societal pressures and the blame is always on the mother. It's never on the father. It's like
Yes.
there's something wrong. It must be your fault.
Yeah, and that's just how it has been generationally. And I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon, unfortunately. And that's where we want to stand up for ourselves, as moms. And we are not only going outside the home and working outside, but we're also literally the CEOs of our homes, as well. So again, I can't stress the importance of taking care of yourself as a mother, but also leading, with empathy, not just for your child, but for yourself, and getting away from blaming and labeling your child and yourself. And I think it's really important for those moms to look for support groups and finding, your people where you are not feeling judged and you feel like you're held and supported. And a coach can definitely help with that as well. And a support group can continually provide the support for that as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's been so valuable for me because if you go into a group of like neurotypical kids, your kid is going to seem like a complete disaster. And you go into a group of, gifted kids, 2E kids, neurodivergent kids. It's like everybody, all the kids are like, okay, so it really isn't my fault. Like,
Yeah.
this is just what these kids are like. And yes, every kid's different, different flavors, different challenges, but it is so important that support piece and that validation piece and that not having the isolation that comes with parenting and solo parenting and just being the one who's in the trenches day in, day out, because that will lead to burnout.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. And, interestingly, it's not just the neurodivergent kids, it's kids who, parents with teenagers who are back talking or eye rolling, they also feel isolated. They also feel like, what have I done wrong? Why is my child behaving like this? Whereas the other friend's teenager is not like that. Well, you don't know what's happening in their home and the challenges they. So I think the isolation piece is universal with all moms. Like, we're kind of together, but we're so isolated in that sense. And that's why, a coaching program or a support group is so important, because then it at least starts that conversation. At least there's a place to, if nothing else, vent your feelings and feel like somebody's there to hold you and support you, even if they're just listening.
Yeah, I think it's totally critical. So, we always like to leave our listeners with practical advice and tips. And so, if there's a mom listening to the show today who is struggling with yelling or feeling at the end of their rope, what sort of you mentioned the micro vacations, which I love. I think that's a great tip. Are there any other quick tips or approaches that you would say, try this today? And then, of course, we're going to give all of your information at the end.
Yeah. I think the important piece that I want to leave you with is, when chaos hits, calm first, react second.
Mm, okay. How do you do that? That's
So,
the critical part, right? It's like, okay, it sounds good. I don't want to be chaotic. I want to be calm, but my nervous system doesn't know how to do that.
yeah, I think the first step would be connect with yourself. Try to find a connection with yourself and then acknowledge the situation, lead with boundaries, and model the behavior you want to see.
Mm. Yeah, gosh, it's easier said than done, but you are here. Dr. Juhi is here to help folks. So why don't you let us know what are some ways people could find you, get in touch with you, work with you? I know you're on Instagram, but what are the other places that people could connect with you on?
Yeah. Absolutely. So my Instagram handle is at Dr. Juhi. I'm also on Facebook, and my website is thecalmparentcollective.com. You can DM me. That would be the easiest to find me on Instagram. I have group coaching programs, and I also take one on one clients. I do speaking in the community as well. So I love to meet people and help and support and guide them in their parenting journey. That's my passion.
I love it. This episode has been so valuable. What a phenomenal conversation we had with Dr. Juhi. And I think that her insights really reminded us that, parenting doesn't have to be a battlefield. It's about connection and understanding, and it's a journey. And it's different at every stage. Every stage has its challenges. So if her advice resonated with you, which I'm sure it did, make sure to connect with her in all the places that she mentioned. We're going to put those in the show notes. And, stay connected with the show. Make sure that you follow us, like us, leave us a review. Reviews are so helpful for helping other women discover the show, which is so important. And yeah, just like I always say, remember, burnout is not your destiny. It's your wake-up call.
Amazing.